If you can't hear very well, just let us know and we'll try and speak a bit more loudly. And Jonathan, great to see you. So just a little bit about TBC in background. So as Jonathan said, we're the largest bank in Georgia. Been around for nigh on 30 years. Quite a big business in general terms, not just by Georgian terms. Very profitable, very digital, but it's a commercial bank, branch-based originally with full service or corporate investment banking, SME, retail, the full gamut. But Georgia's quite a small place. It's a great place, but it's small, 3.7 million. So the TBC crew at some point said, okay, what happens next? Because we can keep growing in an amazing growing economy. So the Georgian economy is growing by 10%, can you believe, per annum. And that happened before the dislocations that happened in the region and the influx of people from neighboring countries in 22, 23. But still, we'll run out of runway for growth at some point. So where do we go? And the Georgians are very commercial. I call them Vikings, commercial Vikings. They get in the longboat and off they go. And you look around this region, the wider region, and there's all sorts of amazing stories that have been built by Georgians. Just thinking of Kaspi, for example, in Kazakhstan. And they saw that Uzbekistan was opening up. It's got some geographical proximity, obviously lots of common heritage, if you like. Georgians speak Russian when they need to. I hope that's not politically incorrect. And they speak very good Russian. And we're obviously a Russian-speaking team. And so they started taking a deep dive, the original team, into Uzbekistan, understood that something very interesting is happening here and has been for the last 10 years, and took the decision to enter. So 2019, the button was pressed, and TBC, through an M&A, bought a company called PayMe, which is a payments aggregator. When TBC bought it, it had a million customers. Now it has 15 million. I'll come on to the numbers in a minute. So you can see it's grown a lot. So the entry was through payments, through a small M&A. We now own 100% of this business. Initially, we bought 55%. And that was the first move. Then the second move was to, in 2021, get a banking license from scratch. So we were issued a banking license and TBC Uz, which is a pure play digital bank, branchless. So if you think of some of the leading digital banks in the world, I'm talking Tinkoff in Russia, where I used to work for many, many years from the very beginning, 15 years as CEO. Monzo in the UK, for example, Revolut, I'm sure you're familiar with, New Bank in Brazil, Kaspi I mentioned earlier, and a few other banks, actually a lot of them from around this region, for want of a better word, the former Soviet Union. Something along those lines. So we had PayMe, 2019 onwards, TBC Uz built from scratch, digital branchless bank. And then from 2023, we started diversifying. So initially TBC Uz was launched with retail deposits. So that was for funding. And then we launched fairly soon afterwards a lending-led strategy, which is very important for reasons that I think we'll come on to later, which was digital personal loans. And this is brand new for the market. So this was the disruptive element and the tech data-driven approach. And then in 2023, we started diversifying. So we started building other products and services to build a digital banking ecosystem. So full service for consumer and for SME. And I see Nukri, my colleague, who's head of TBC Bank in Uzbekistan, who was talking about SME before at the previous session. SME is super important in terms of our roadmap going forward. There's a huge opportunity here and very much an underserved segment. So just to give you an idea of the scale, so we now have 20 million unique registered users. These are people who have downloaded our app.
Many times more the population of Georgia, actually, where the bank's
exactly.
roots are.
Already 6 times the population of Georgia, almost. We have 6 million MAU, monthly active users, across our ecosystem. So we have lots of different licensed entities in the group. in Uzbekistan. We have around $1 billion or thereabouts of assets, and growing very quickly. So our loan book has basically been doubling every year for the last few years from a low base, but it's as big as our delivery capabilities, our execution. And we made $41 million net profit last year. We broke even after 2 years of operations, which is one of basically a record for digital banks in the world. And that's very important as well, which again, we'll probably come on to later, why being self-sufficient is important. And we're set to make, because we're a publicly listed company, we give guidance to the market. So we'll make around $75 million in net profit this year. So it's already quite big, scaling nicely, full service, and very, very product and customer focused in terms of solving pain points, understanding what problems we're solving for different categories of customers in Uzbekistan today, and an absolutely brilliant market for us to be in.
But you make it sound so easy the past 5 or 6 years, here's this wonderful success story, stellar growth, which is amazing when you think about it, but it can't have been that easy because you were bringing a very different model to what was quite an old-fashioned system. And at the same time, of course, you're having to build your credibility here, presumably, as an institution that people didn't know. So
Sure.
there must have been some bumps as well. You came in as a challenger.
Yep. So this is operational business, and some businesses are as local as they can get. Yeah. So for example, food retail, super local. Retail banking, so consumer lending, consumer finance solutions, payments, super local. So you can't come in with a cookie cutter approach that you have in other markets, as many international institutions, financial institutions have found out, because the graveyard is littered with these of people who tried to come with this, one size fits all approach. So you have to localize, you have to go deep, you have to understand the competitive environment, the regulatory landscape, and the consumer. So obviously we made mistakes, we had lots of bumps, all sorts of things happen regularly, especially in emerging markets. Yeah. So this is where you can create value for your users and for the business, for your shareholders and stakeholders. But it's also volatile, and that just it's just the nature of the beast for doing this kind of startup ramp up in this kind of market. But I have to also say that that is mitigated, if for want of a better word, by the fact that Uzbekistan is very welcoming. Yeah. So it has good infrastructure, it has good talent, it has good local Uzbek talent, but it also has it's a place that other people want to work in. Yeah. So in terms of expats or returning Uzbeks who are expats themselves, it has a very interesting infrastructure. So if you think about the payments ecosystem here, it's actually very well developed, and it has this thing which we call, if you like, quasi open banking. And in many respects, it's more advanced or sophisticated than you'd see in many European countries that have been trying to roll out open banking forever. And that's another attractive part of this, which it's an enablement layer for a digital player, such as ourselves. You were talking to Jasor from Zoom, so this enabled the appearance of digital players very quickly. It's also got a very data-rich and digitized system, which enables you to do all sorts of things online, including online KYC, which you don't have in many markets. So I worked in Russia for 15 years before the war, and there you didn't have digital KYC. It was still offline meetings, can you believe, even though Russia's very digitized. So in Uzbekistan, you can do the full thing end-to-end, onboarding KYC digitally. So yeah, there's a lot of things where we had to cut our teeth and basically build something which is brand new for the market as a challenger.
It's an interesting, interesting.
But there's lots of stuff that facilitates it.
Yeah, because you've sort of opened a door, haven't you, in an area that was not served before, because that's not what the legacy banking system or financial system was doing here. So is it a door that you think others are coming through as well?
For sure. So one of the great things about being a market that is open to new players, to new models, to foreign players. So we're a local player, I would argue now, but obviously initially we came from Georgia. So you allow experimentation, innovation, tests, which is what Uzbekistan has been very good at doing in lots of different spaces in terms of tech businesses. We're a tech business. And this actually really quite quickly changes the environment, and other banks then have to digitize. So you have some digital players. You saw Uzum. There's a bank called Anor Bank who are hybrid, but very digitally enabled. Lots of other banks, local players and foreign players with very good mobile apps and actually pretty good and rapidly improving customer experience and tech. So this opened the floodgates, if you like, for lots of
Right.
changes across the banking system, which can only be good. It fosters competition, it attracts talent, we grow talent inside, and so you see that all of this kind of raises the bar for everybody, which is obviously great.
And you've talked a lot about the importance of tech in the business. Obviously, staying ahead of that tech curve all the time is quite important then for you to keep growth. So what are you doing to make sure that you're constantly innovating?
So in this business, you have a set of trade-offs, if you like. So you have a constant balancing act between not biting off more than you can chew and being executionally excellent or operationally excellent. So you have to do what you do extremely well, be focused. Sequencing is a very important part of this as well. But equally, you have to always be 1, 2, sometimes 3 steps ahead of the game in order to keep your differentiation, your value proposition nice and fresh for customers, attract new customers and try and bring down the CAC, the cost of acquisition. And this requires constant innovation. So you have this thing that we call a feature factory where you're constantly rolling out new products, features, services. And so you have to be very, quick in terms of time to market, flexible, agile with a small a. So maybe just to come back to go off on a slight tangent, if you don't mind, the importance of execution and sequencing is huge. So I referred to the fact that we broke even after 2 years, and that's very important because in markets like Uzbekistan, emerging markets in general, very often you have a scarcity of venture capital or early private equity capital. And so it's difficult to fund yourself, and it's been especially difficult to fund yourself over if you're a startup in fintech over the last basically 4 or 5 years. So it was a great period after COVID, 22, and then 23 things started to go sour, and so it's been very difficult for fintechs, early stage companies in tech in general to fund themselves. So it's super important in a company that relies on capital as its building material to become self-sufficient as quickly as possible. So we've been very focused. We've sequenced very carefully. We started with a product, basically personal loans, which generates capital as a high ROE business very quickly in order to build something sustainable where we don't have to keep running to the markets to get funding, which may or may not be there. But on the other side, we want to build new experience. We want to do new things, and we have the great privilege of being in a market that allows us to do that. So we can innovate. So we innovated first of all by being the first mobile-only digital bank in Uzbekistan, and actually one of the only mobile-only banks in the world, because most are hybrid. And as we discussed, that raised the bar, and lots of people followed, and it's changed the environment for consumer and digital banking in Uzbekistan very quickly, which is great. So what's next? We're rolling out lots of products and services. We have a very busy product development roadmap. So over the last 12 months, we've launched literally 7 or 8 new different products as we go. We build our business out product by product in terms of verticals. And the next thing, which we've been working on, is AI.
Yes.
So
I don't know. So how is that going to change things? Both for you as a company, but also for the people who use TBC Bank. Presumably, it's going to affect both.
Indeed. So I think it's useful to break down AI because everybody bandies around AI. Yeah. So what does it actually mean? I think there are 3 categories into which you can break this down. So the first is rather obvious, if you like, back office stuff, to use an old-fashioned banking term, which is efficiency. So that's basically doing more with less resource, for want of a better phrase. The second area is revenue generation, finding new revenue generating opportunities by deploying AI technologies. And the third is creating new customer experiences, so CX. And we have different use cases, 3 use cases in each of these 3 areas. And we built our own tech stack. So if you don't mind, I'll just explain what we've done, because I think this is actually quite important for Uzbekistan, without sounding too pompous. So there's a lot going on in the fintech and tech scene in Uzbekistan, but hasn't been that much going on in AI. And that's because AI is difficult to build. It's difficult to find the right people with the right muscles and expertise, and it's expensive. So we've probably spent already $10 million, and this is a very early stage. You know, we've got to invest tons more in building this out. We decided that we would skip the usual phase of going through bots, which are pretty pedestrian these days, and go straight to speech tech. So in order to build speech tech in Uzbekistan, it's a bit of an all or nothing kind of approach. So you can't be, dip your toe into speech tech. And there's a good reason for that. So rather unflatteringly, Uzbekistan is called a lower resource country in terms of language, because it's only, in inverted commas, 38 million population. And Uzbek has a certain number of peculiarities, or it's a specific set of languages, which mean that big tech, so the global tech players, have overlooked Uzbekistan. So they either don't speak Uzbek, their solutions, in terms of AI and LLMs, or they speak Uzbek very poorly, which is not enough for customer service, for example. So we decided to build it ourselves. And actually, this is quite a big journey. So if you don't mind, I'll just explain it very quickly. So we decided to build a speech tech platform. So we took all of our millions of calls and customer interactions, which could be chat calls, outbound calls, inbound calls. We converted that to text, which requires a huge human effort to moderate this and make sure it's annotated properly. That what we think we've translated or transcribed is correct. You put this into a model, and then you convert the text to speech, which requires synthesis. And we built our own synthesis. So we built an Uzbek synth and a Russian synth. And why is this important? Because one of the reasons why big tech isn't here building Uzbek solutions, there's a number of different reasons, but one of the reasons is that the way people interact in Uzbekistan is unusual, because there's 4 languages at least here. So Karakal-Platsky, Uzbek, Tajik, Persian, Russian, and other languages as well. So Kazakh and various other languages which are spoken. Within Uzbek, you have lots of different dialects. And even more unusual, within a conversation in Uzbek, people switch between Russian and Uzbek, literally in one sentence. It's absolutely commonplace. You know this yourself. And even worse, from a design perspective, from a tech perspective, people switch between Latin, Cyrillic, and an Uzbek kind of hybrid. So this is quite a big challenge from a tech design and analytics point of view. So we built this ourselves. And having Russian and Uzbek synth means we can switch between the 2 languages within a phrase, just as a natural language situation would when an Uzbek's calling our call center, talking to our agent, or chatting in chat. So we built this speech tech platform, and we built our own large language model, LLM, in Uzbek and Russian, which again enables this switching. All of this is on platform, on premise, inside our own data center. So we had to import GPUs at great expense to do this. There's very strict data privacy requirements in Uzbekistan. It's very highly regulated. But this is how you have to do it. So it's all within our firewall. And started rolling out these 3 use cases. So we have now 50% of our payment reminders handled by our own call bots. So this is voice. Basically, in banking terms, it's called early collections. So this is 50%.
Does that
Is
have
out.
interactivity?
Yeah,
That's,
absolutely. Yes, you can
yeah,
talk to
yeah.
it, and most people don't understand
Right.
that it's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
bot, for a machine that they're
Interesting.
talking to. And obviously, it's still relatively
Yep.
early stage. We're still training it. It's getting better and better, but most people don't get it. They think they're talking to a human.
Yep.
The second area is a sales bot, which we rolled out in Telegram. So another unusual thing about Uzbekistan is that it's the largest market in terms of penetration
Mm.
for
Yes. Yeah.
Telegram.
Yeah.
So probably around 70, 80%. If you write somebody in WhatsApp in Uzbekistan, they won't answer you. So I had to learn how to use Telegram. It was quite easy, fortunately. So yes, we have this sales bot, which gives us 30% better conversion in Telegram,
Wow.
and we're rolling
Okay.
that out. So that's a revenue generating opportunity. But the exciting thing, and this finally answering your question, sorry for rambling a bit, is when we actually get to the CX part of what we're doing. So if any of you know, I'm sure there's lots of people using ChatGPT. It's top of the stores in terms of downloads in Uzbekistan at the moment, so I'm sure everybody's on it. There's also
Yep.
Perplexity, which I really like in a US kind of alternative to Google search now. That's what I use all the time, and I see my kids are using it as well, which is good. So if you think about a mobile app, which now most people have, let's face it, some people have better mobile apps, some people have worse mobile apps. But if you add this new interaction through a button, which is the kind of voice assistant approach where you can leave a message, so send a voice message, you can talk real time, you can chat, you can do a hybrid, you can do a bit of a mix. That's what we'll have in our mobile app in the coming months. Run on our own Uzbek Russian LLM with our own synth. So it's really quite cutting edge and very exciting because we will change the form factor of how people interact, and it's pretty cool.
Well,
Next generation banking.
Again, so do you think you'll keep that as just yourself, or having developed it, can you imagine offering it to other users in some form, obviously for funding, in return? But I mean, it's because there aren't many people who are probably doing that in terms
There's
of
not many people who can do that.
no.
So
You're developing something which the whole market would be interested in, probably.
yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
So I think there's kind of two ways this can go. The first way that we have to go is building out more and more use cases. So these are three actually relatively limited use cases. And there's so many places we can deploy this technology to improve customer experience and interaction. One way is to sell it to the market, which is your question basically. So we have a platform, we can sell this or license it to other players in the market, which we would certainly countenance and basically make it into a business in its own right. The other way is a bit of a departure, and maybe this is from the stuff of fantasy at the moment, but I like it. You have an assistant built by TBC, which travels with you to other apps and other experiences. So it's kind of decoupled from
an
TBC.
agentic,
Exactly.
it's your personal concierge.
And I really like that. And that would be an enabler for the market as well for other companies, but it would be powered by us, if you like. So
that's an
we'll see
interesting
how that
concept.
goes.
Yeah, I like that idea as well. Okay, we'll take some audience questions in a minute, but just one final question before we go to audience questions, and then maybe some more of mine. How does the reform backdrop play into your success here? Because obviously you couldn't have done this 9 years ago. So it's because some of the reforms have happened that makes this a more attractive and more open market. But how does all that work when you're thinking about the market?
So obviously this is a market which is open for business. This is an investment forum here, and you can see that it's very welcoming, very much on the front foot. Obviously, all emerging markets have their subtleties, and that's what makes it interesting, fun, and that's why there's amazing opportunities in places like Uzbekistan, but particularly in Uzbekistan. So the reform program has certainly opened up all sorts of opportunities. It's a place that's very investor friendly. We talk to investors all the time as a publicly listed company, but obviously I'll talk to not just public investors, but also investors on the private side. It's getting on the map because Uzbekistan is doing a lot of the right things in the right order. But obviously it's not just about investments and availability of capital. And by the way, I should have probably mentioned this number because it's quite important. We have brought into Uzbekistan as TBC Group with our partners EBRD and IFC. So they have 10% each in TBC Digital, which is our holding company. or management company to be precise, in Uzbekistan. 80% TBC Group, 10% EBRD, 10% IFC. We've invested around soon to be $700 million in the country. And about a third of that has come through equity investments, and the rest has come from debt, very broadly speaking. So you can see the level of commitment in terms of TBC to this market. So investments are very important, but there's lots of other things which are no less important. And that's, for example, talent. So we're very fortunate in being a very international company. We have around 28 nationalities inside TBC Uzbekistan. This is obviously Uzbeks, Georgians, Tajiks, Kazakhs, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Azerbaijanis, Russians, you name it. We have a very, very diverse team. But we need more Uzbeks to scale further. So we currently have 3,700 employees. Obviously, overwhelmingly, they're in Uzbekistan and overwhelmingly Uzbek. But we need more of the right talent in terms of engineers, designers, data analysts, data scientists, product people, super important for our tech business. And there's enough of them, but over time, as more and more companies scale up, and you've been talking to some of them while you've been here, we need more. So the education, the training, and the emphasis, if you like, the incentive system to get people to go to these places, retain them in the country or bring them back to the country if they've left the country, is going to be hugely important. So I would argue that Uzbekistan is going down the journey of becoming a tech hub. To a certain extent, it is a tech hub, but to become, a truly global level tech hub, it has to do a lot more on the side of talent.
Interesting.
But the talent pool could definitely be there. Just needs to be bigger. Another area is infrastructure. So the infrastructure and the payments ecosystem is very, very interesting. An amazing enablement layer here. Unusual, but it needs to be scaled because there's more tech players who have lots of data requirements. So we need data centers. There's a lot being done, but there's obviously a long lead time, gestation period to build data centers. And the data center infrastructure is not going to be enough. We need an Uzbek cloud because we can't have offshore cloud due to legislative requirements in Uzbekistan. They'll need to modernize a lot of their payments infrastructure. The banks need to modernize. So that's a challenge area for all countries who are going through this big kind of boom or rapid development cycle. And lots being done, but they'll need to do more over time. And probably legislation and regulation. So it was interesting listening to the speaker from the EBRD yesterday, who was saying that business needs predictability.
Yeah.
And I think I should echo that. So Uzbekistan does very well at being predictable, investor friendly, very much open and progressive. But predictability is something which business definitely needs because it has planning cycles, capital cycles, need to bring money in, etc. Take money out sometimes, and this kind of thing needs to be taken into account by the whole of the Uzbek government or establishment. And I think maybe the Uzbek government is doing some fantastic stuff, but also needs to regularly listen to business. What's business saying? What are the pain points? What are the challenges? Not just this year, but in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, in order to foster a world-class business environment.
That's a very interesting point of it, because of course that's when countries in transitions find it most difficult because they haven't built the feedback mechanisms of the sort that have been in existence elsewhere. Very interesting. I would also always like to hear a mention of the EBRD as a former executive of the EBRD. That warms my heart. Let's see if there are any audience questions. If you've got a question, put up your hand. Lots of questions. Well, okay, we'll get a microphone to you. Let's start in the front row. So yes, you're on. Get you a microphone, Eugene. Yeah. Do we have a microphone? Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Eugene, yes. Is it working? Oh.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Hi.
Oliver, hi.
Hi.
I'm Eugene Antonov from Navoy Gold Mining Company. So we're a state-owned company, the largest company in the country. But of course,
I've heard of Navo Gold. Salam alaikum.
I'm sure you have. Salam alaikum. So it's a really fascinating story because, you know, mining is traditionally viewed as a very conservative industry, which is currently not the case, and we're doing some progress as well to demonstrate the opposite in terms of going digital, in terms of integrating with global capital markets. I'm sure you heard about our very successful bond issues recently.
Something you both have in common then.
Thank you. Yeah, we placed a bond of $200 million a few days ago. So thank you for
Great.
reminding me.
Congratulations. So, but we're also very interested to see what else is going on in the country, and obviously your success story is truly it's a triumph, and it's something that I believe it should be viewed as a business case for example, for MBA schools in Uzbekistan to showcase fintech success. One question I had, I'm actually also a client of TBC, and I must admit that what attracted me the most was the very generous interest rates of your deposit proposals that we saw last year. But we saw that a couple of months ago, they significantly dropped. So as a consumer, and I'm talking to you as a consumer, what's driving that? Was it like a political decision or it's a commercial decision? Because clearly when you have such attractive interest rates, why invest in equities? Why even go to equity markets? You know, it's a guarantee, especially given that the local currency is quite stable and has not depreciated against the US dollar much.
Sure.
So, you know, why not, you know, it's a message to everyone, you know, convert your dollars into sums and invest in TBC.
Thank you very much
That's a
for the
good question.
It is indeed. It's
Makes me
brilliant.
now want to go and invest my money in TBC. Yes, Oliver.
Well, you can.
Yeah.
So, first, Rahmat, that you are our customer. And I very much hope that you have become our customer with the Salom card as well. So Salom card is our locomotive product in terms of attracting, let's say, for want of a better term, the middle classes in Uzbekistan, and actually beyond middle class in the mass market as well, with an amazing product, which is a transactional product. It's a debit card linked to your current account, which pays interest on your current account balance as well as giving you free transfers, free ATM withdrawals. So I'm doing a bit of marketing, but it's an important way to answer your question. So get yourself a Salom card. Deposits. So when this actually feeds back into a point that Jonathan made earlier about being a digital player with no branches, a brand new model, brand new for Uzbekistan, and actually, you know, fairly uncommon the world over. There's not actually that many digital banks, certainly not scaled. And when you come into the market and you're retail funded, so retail deposits, you have to pay a premium to the market. That's just how it works. Yeah. So we were one of the most expensive from our point of view. Yeah. So one of the best from a customer point of view in terms of the rates that we offered. But the more we scale, the bigger we get, the more our the level of confidence,
Yeah,
credibility,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So the level of confidence of the consumer in our institution grows, and the premium that we have to pay to the market narrows. Yeah, and that's what you're seeing now. That's one of the main drivers. The second driver is we have lots of different funding sources. So we're starting to go into SME, as I mentioned earlier, and that's super important because that'll give us funding as well, which is much cheaper. We're going to current accounts, the Salom card, which is already giving us much cheaper funding. We have bonds, so we have a wholesale funding pipeline, which is cheaper than retail deposits. So one of the weird things about the Uzbek market is that the big outlier when you look at the numbers, the metrics, is cost of funding. So there's a squeeze on liquidity. And the reason why that happens in Uzbekistan is because there's a funding gap. It's narrowing a little bit, but it's still there. So the national loan book is much bigger than the national deposit book, including, you know, corporate and retail. And while that gap exists, before, let's say, the wider consumer feels confident enough to put their retail money, take it out from under the pillow or dollars or whatever, wherever they hold it, and put it in a bank as a deposit, then this gap will continue to exist. And because there's a gap, it means a liquidity scarcity, and that means you have to pay to get customers to put in your institution. That's just unfortunately the mechanics of how it works. There's also some regulatory conversations which take place as you'd expect, because the regulator doesn't want to see deposits going up, the rates, they want to see them coming down. And that's absolutely normal, and I've seen that in many other markets where I've worked. So you will see a drift down market-wide, and probably a faster reduction in terms of TBC. But we're still paying 23%, so it's a good number for you guys. Take it while you can, because it won't be there for long.
Thank you.
Eugene, thank you very much for the question. So, gentlemen, do you take the microphone? That'd be great.
Thank you. Jacob Shaw, Lindemann Law, a law office and consultancy. We just had before Jasul from Uzum that you were interviewing here, and I wondered, Uzum also, among many other things, also offer fintech services, payment services, and so forth. How much is that a competition for you? I understand it's a very different company, but how much is that a competition for you?
Okay.
Thank you for the question. Shall I dive in?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we haven't actually really talked about the competitive landscape, and it's very important, obviously. So 65% or thereabouts of all banking assets are still inside one of a dozen or so state-owned banks. So that's still because of the way the legacy of the market and how it developed. Yeah, and now it's changing. So over time it'll be 50-50 and probably moving towards privately held banks, some of whom will be privatized state banks, and everybody I assume knows about the privatization program. So the structure of the market is changing, but it's still what it is for historical reasons. There's a very vibrant, let's say, privately held market, and actually some very good stuff being done by state-owned banks as well. So there are foreign players, there are local, let's say, more traditional banks, some very good ones. I'll just name a few. This is not an exclusive list, no exhaustive list. Ipakuli, Hamcor, Capital Bank, Anor Bank. There's lots of stuff going on, and some pretty good digital plays. And then there's if you like, the new breed of more digital companies. So TBC, who are pure digital, Uzum, a marketplace with a big fintech business. At the moment, there's plenty of space for everybody. So we're all raising the boats together, and we're not locking horns. Yeah. But over time, we certainly will. And I think so it's kind of more co-opetition at the moment, but it'll be more competition over time. There's still a huge market in an underserved, with an underserved population, loss of financial inclusion, or let's say overhaul of financial services that have been done in the past. But that competition, if you look kind of 3 years out, will certainly come, and we'll be competing with Uzum. We're very good friends with Uzum, but we'll also be competing with them for sure. Other digital players around, and there's a very interesting Tajik outfit called Alif, who are one of the big installment lenders in Uzbekistan. Very good guys, very digital. So it's going to get interesting. And then on top of that, you have the e-commerce layer. So they're not our direct competitors today by any means, but they'll be competing with Uzum, Yandex, Azon, Caspian not coming in the market, Wildberries. So there's a lot going on. So it's a very vibrant scene in terms of tech businesses, e-commerce, classifieds, taxi, so online mobility, and fintech and digital banking. And it's great because we're all building infrastructure, we're all educating the customers, but it's not, hand-to-hand combat in the trenches, and it won't be for a long time. But also, I would just add that TBC has a very long lead time. So we've been doing this for 5 years here. We're well established. We have really quite a big market share in the verticals where we work. We have our tech, we have our team, we have our product, we have our interface. So competition is good, but we're going to be a few steps ahead of the game.
Great sense of dynamism in that market as well.
Yes, it's great.
Thank you very much. Okay, yes. Okay, lady at the front and then gentleman at the back. Let's pass the microphone down to you. very quickly. Okay.
Hello, Anna from Savi. Thank you for the interesting discussion. And I just wanted to ask you, what's next for TBC in Uzbekistan? Are you like considering expanding more into corporate lending?
So thanks very much for the question. So we're really very much at the start of our journey. So I just said that we've been here 5 years, which is a long time. So we've got this first mover advantage, which is true. But equally, we're only just starting. Yeah, the party's only just getting warmed up. So we have a lot of the verticals built. So we have personal loans. We're one of the biggest payment players, B2C. We got a bit of B2B payments, credit cards, debit cards, BNPL, what have I forgotten? Installment loans offline. So we got tons and tons of verticals on the consumer side. We launched SME accounts, so accounts for business, at the end of last year. We just launched SME loans, so working capital loans, a couple of months ago, which we're now learning and scaling up. So we are, at the moment, very much a consumer and SME, and when I say SME, I mean the smaller end of SME for the time being, facing player. Tons to do, a lot more verticals to build out, so we'll probably go into auto loans, secured lending for business and for consumer. I reckon we'll probably get to brokerage at some point, so retail investing, insurance we're building, tons and tons of stuff. I won't go through all of this because it could get boring. Will we go into corporate? No. Will we do branch-based banking? No. Will we go into taxi e-commerce? No. Could there be other adjacent opportunities in travel, ticketing, loyalty? Yes, and we'll start doing that, I'm sure. So we know what our core is, financial services. We're a digital bank. That's who we are. That's where we want to stay. Are there areas where we'll start going into non-financial territory? Yeah. Will that be a long way beyond where we are today? No. Not going too far away from our knitting? No. And will corporate ever be in our model? Highly unlikely. Certainly not for, pick a number, 5, 6, 7 years, maybe longer. I think that answers the question.
Okay, that's pretty clear. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, yeah, just 2 rows behind there. Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Bekir Bekachilov, an investment banking director at Alkes. And TBC has made a significant impact on retail banking in Uzbekistan, and we all in financial sector have been following the success of TBC. I've personally been a customer of TBC for several years since the launch of TBC.
Put your hands up
So
if you're not a customer of
just,
TBC, by the way.
Yeah, just building up on a couple previous questions, with the recent regulatory changes being the removal of unlimited guarantee on deposits, with central bank calling lowering the rates for both deposits and lending, tighter KYC AML procedures for microloans, and potential limits for potential future limits for microloans in portfolio concentration. How is TBC planning to adapt and to diversify the portfolio away
Sure.
from the microloans?
Thanks for the question. That sounds like an investor analyst question, which I think you are. Yeah, so great. So let's take a step back from your question because you've got very set of specific questions which I'll answer. So Uzbekistan is an early stage consumer market. Yeah, so there was some kind of consumer banking before, but it was mainly retail as an adjunct to the corporate business. Yeah, so it's salary programs basically. So you become a customer of a bank because your employer has done a deal with the corporate lending bank, and you get a card, and it's low engagement and was pretty low service before until lots of changes started happening as we've been discussing. So I looked at this market before I was invited to join by TBC, and I was actually surprised at how well regulated this market is. So it's much further up the curve than you would expect for a market of this age, young age, yeah? in all sense of the word. So there's a ban on FX lending to consumer. There's PTI, payment to income regulation, or debt burden regulation. There's risk weights. There's a rate cap on consumer loans. There's tons of stuff. Yeah, so it's actually a very not mature, but well-regulated market for where it is. But there's lots still to do. And we have a very active regulator here. Yeah, so every few weeks, some new regulation comes out, which means it's proactive, it's progressive, it's on the front foot, making sure that distortions don't appear in the market or bad practices or anything which could, let's say, hasten the advent of a credit cycle. And this is a cyclical business, so when credit cycles come, you want to make sure it's not this kind of cycle, but it's this kind of cycle. And that's what the regulator's doing. So it's great. It makes it a safe environment to work for everybody, for the consumers, businesses, and for the financial institutions themselves. So to answer your question, there's been a lot of new regulation recently. So in terms of deposit insurance, there was a very generous level of protection, which was the whole of the deposit, uncapped, no matter how many deposits you had and where. I'd never seen that before, and it was great. But I actually personally think that, to be honest with you, maybe customers didn't really understand it, and so it wasn't a big stimulus for mass market consumers to bring their funds into the bank and put them on retail deposits. So if it's not there, basically it's reduced. It's still a pretty healthy level at $15,000, if I recall, or 20,000. I can't remember exactly. I don't think that's going to stop existing depositors continuing to keep their deposits in the system, and you can split it between different banks up to the limit, which is a net positive for us because we're a relatively new entrant in terms of a deposit-taking bank. And I don't think it's going to be a reason for new depositors to not bring their funds into the banking system. So I think it's neutral, to be honest with you. It's not negative. The central bank is definitely, as I mentioned earlier, working to bring down rates across the market, which is understandable. And again, if lending rates go down in lockstep with deposit rates, then that's pretty neutral. You keep your NIMs at a healthy level, to talk banking speak for a second, but your economics are still the same. Yeah. So, but you're cheapening your cost of funding, which is what all banks have to do, and hopefully that's going to be a net positive for the whole of the banking system. And then finally, in terms of portfolio caps, so this is probably one of the big news, big piece of news for the beginning of the year. And what the regulator wants to do is introduce cooling measures early in a very gradual and controlled way to make sure there's no distortions in the market. One of the areas they've been looking at is microloans. In Uzbekistan, they call unsecured personal loans microloans, rather strangely. And they've been capped at 25% of a bank's loan book from the 1st of January 2029. So this is a very long, gradual adaptation period, which is very important. 25% cap for portfolio cap for credit cards, 25% cap for auto loans, which has existed for a couple of years now, and everything else is uncapped. So if you think about our business, we started with, the wedge that we drove into the market in terms of product was consumer loans, microloans as they're called here. But that was just the first slice in terms of our loan book over time. We're adding SME loans, building a credit card business, which is actually going pretty well. Early days, but we like it. Then we had auto loans, installments, cash loans we talked about. And so the structure of our loan book in 3-4 years' time was going to be very different anyway. So that would have taken us to the place where we had 25%. We would be within the 25% caps anyway. So if you think in those terms, it's neutral for us. But there's also another important part of this, which is that the central bank, as a representative of the government here, wants to push SME lending. So there's an underserved, underfinanced, in terms of access, SME landscape segment out there, particularly entrepreneurs, small business. And so they want the banks who have these, let's say, tech-driven and the ability to deliver good service and product to also tackle SME. So this is another way of doing it. And the opportunity there is huge, and we see this as a big part of our business over the next few years.
Okay, thank you very much. One last question actually to you from me, which is, let's bring it back to the investor question. When you look ahead here in Uzbekistan, say 5 years, what do you think this country, this market's going to be like, and what would that say to foreign investors?
So it's obviously a country that's changing quickly, yeah. And by the way, I hope in a few years' time, Uzbekistan can say it's won the World Cup at least once.
I'd like England to be able to say we won the
We all
World
would.
Cup again at some stage.
Yeah, echoes of 1966 we hear all the time.
Waited a long time. I'm an old man. I can't wait much longer.
Hopefully Uzbekistan won't need to wait quite so long. So I think that we'll see the rapid growth, which we're already seeing, but from a relatively early stage or small base, the development of tech businesses. So this is a government priority, as we've been talking, describing infrastructure being built, talent being developed, a lot more to do, but you can see the direction of travel. And so also because of the socio-demographics of Uzbekistan, which everybody understands, the adoption rates, especially the younger you are, the higher the adoption rate of tech services, digital finance, whatever it might be. As these people become economically active, so the cohorts come into the market, it means that the level of tech adoption will just accelerate dramatically. And so this generational effect is very important. And so I mean, you can see the signs already, but I think this will be, a bit of a poster child in terms of the level of penetration of digital services in just about all areas, which is obviously very attractive for investors. So investors look at it today, they understand this cohort generational effect, and they understand where this can be in 5, 10, 15 years. I assume and hope that the reform path, the investability of the country will continue, and more from my personal conversations with investors in Uzbekistan, when I go to the US, Europe on road shows, because we're a publicly listed company, I see more and more tech, fintech, more traditional, let's say, emerging market financial institution investors waking up to Uzbekistan. So before, let's say 3 years, it just wasn't on the radar. 2 years ago, we'll start taking a look, but it's low priority. Last year, we're already starting to take a look. And right now, it's actually becoming, I'll say hot, but
hotter, definitely.
Yeah, definitely warm. Yeah. And I think we'll see what happens, but I think over the next 3 years, 5 years, that will become a theme. Yeah, for all the right reasons, because of the profile of Uzbekistan, which is phenomenal.
Thank you very much, Oliver. That was great and a very impressive story. Anyway, impressive growth. That shows what can be achieved here as well, actually, that impressive growth. Congratulations on that. Thanks for sparing the time to talk to us. Thank you to you, the audience, and have a good afternoon. Thank you.